Welcome to Lesson 13, Drawing Ruffles and Cascades. Today we're going to learn a couple of different methods for drawing ruffles, and we are also going to learn how to draw a cascade. This is a cascade. If you don't know what a cascade looks like, it goes back and forth like that. And a ruffle, there's no ruffles on this particular drawing, but we'll get right to ruffles in just a second. So let's talk about the difference between a ruffle and a cascade. They're both pieces of fabric that are sewn into a garment, and one has gather lines and one does not. Now if you see this, this is a ruffle right here, and you can see it's very full on this edge right here, and then where it's gathered into the seam line, we have these little lines that indicate that we have extra fabric. So it might be a little bit easier to see down here, and you can see this is our seam line where we have it gathered in. This is our full hem line where we've got so much fabric that it's pushing the fabric and making the fabric fold back on itself. It's really drawn very, very similar to a little teeny tiny miniature skirt. So the technique is very similar to the one that we used to draw the skirt. And now a cascade is a little bit different, and a cascade does not have gather lines. So if we look here, you can see that it's smooth right here, right at the seam line. So rather than being a lot of gather lines that are giving it fullness, the cascade is smooth right here, and it's larger on the outside. It's almost the same principle as our flared skirt, where the flared part of the skirt fit right at the waistline. Well, now it's fitting right at the neckline, and the large part of it is flaring outwards. So a cascade is these wide rolling folds. They kind of go back and forth and go back and forth, but they always want to point back towards where they are sewn in, which is what we're looking at here. On a cascade, you can see the part of the fabric that's on top, and then you can also see the underfold where it's folding back underneath. So this is the part of the fabric that's folding underneath. Here it's on top. Here we've got two pieces of fabric that are folding underneath. So that's what we're going to learn to draw today. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you two different methods of drawing ruffles. One is method 1 and the other is method 2. Now this is on page M3. And I'm going to show you a very basic way to draw a cascade. So this is what we're going to be working on today. So let's talk about drawing a ruffle with method 1. And I'm going to get out my tracing paper here, and we will draw a ruffle. Now the first thing you need to do when you're drawing a ruffle is you need to indicate where the ruffle is going to be sewed into the seam. So we always start off with a solid line like this. I'm going to curve mine a little bit. And then we need to locate how long the ruffle is. If it's a really long ruffle, I draw it down here. Really short ruffle, I'll make like a medium ruffle. And just like we did the skirt, I'm going to indicate where to draw the bottom of the ruffle. Now, to get this is for method 1 ruffle, and what I'm going to do on the method 1 ruffle is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to follow along the dotted line, I'm just going to bring it back a little bit, and then I'm going to come back. So it's kind of almost looks like a little puzzle piece. You can make some a little wider than others and some a little narrower. And I also want my last one to be going up. So then the next thing I need to do is, just like we did with the skirts, I need to connect make some little cones. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to draw this up right from the very tips of my fold. These are the folds of the ruffle on the top of the fold. Make this a little bit longer. And if this were the end of my ruffle, it would go right up here like this. And I'll do the same thing over here. There's the end of my ruffle. Now I've got to add a couple more little lines to make it look more like a ruffle. And right in here is where the fabric is folding back on itself. So I'm going to draw just some little tiny little lines right in here. And then I also need to show some little gather lines on the top. So I'm going to take my gather lines and I'm going to run it down like this. And you'll notice that the gather lines have to connect up to the seam line because that's where they're originating, but they don't have to all come all the way down. And you can see my folds are coming all the way down to where they meet in here, and some of my little gather lines are just a little bit shorter. So that's a method 1 ruffle. Now a method 2 ruffle is kind of taking the same idea. We're going to start out exactly the same, and there's where my seam line is, and I'll make this one a little bit shorter so you can see a little variety. Here's my length of my ruffle. Now this one I'm going to do it very similar to the way that we did our skirt. And I'll spread them out. Ruffles don't have to be exactly even. They can be spread out a little bit. The folds can be a little bit, and some can be a little narrower. I think I'll put one more in here, a little narrow one. Okay, so now just like with our skirt, I have to connect the bottoms like this of my cones. And I have to do where the back of the fabric folds back like this. And then I just need to add a few more gathers up here. And that'll show that my ruffle is indeed gathered into that seam line. And then I just need to clean it up a little bit down here. Like this. And there's my method 2 ruffle. So this is a method 1, and this is a method 2. And you have these instructions in your syllabus handouts. So those are our two types of ruffles. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to put it on a flat. Next, we're going to learn how to draw a cascade. And cascades look really complicated, but they're actually pretty easy to draw. If you look at page M9, you can see that what a cascade is, it's a piece of fabric. The fabric is actually sewn right down the center. And then as it falls down the body, it cascades, or it kind of moves back and forth like this. Here you can see it's been sewn into the neckline seam, and it's cascading, or it's folding back and forward like this. So all we need to do is show how those folds are falling, and that's probably the hardest part, is trying to visualize how it's done, and that's what I'm going to help you with right now. All right, so the first thing we'll do when we're drawing a cascade is we'll put a little dotted line, and that's going to be where the seam is actually sewn into the garment. And then we'll start it off with a little triangle up here, and we will go, and it's got to go back and forth. So really the way to draw a cascade is to draw a squiggle. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you can see how I just did, almost looks like a little Christmas tree. So now, this is not quite connected, right? I need to connect my lines. So on a cascade, this is where it's sewn in right here. So this is going over. Now this piece of fabric, see, is going to go right in there. This piece of fabric, they're all kind of going back towards that dotted line and towards that dotted line. Now one of the things I want to stress is that it has to hit right here where the curve of the cascade is. So right here and right here, and we're going to end it right here where it is sewn right into the seam. Then all you would have to do is go in here and erase your seam line where it's actually sewn in. And that is how you do a cascade. So let's talk about what you're actually going to turn in. You are going to draw 2 sample ruffles where you practice using method number 1, and then a sample ruffle where you practice using ruffle and technique number 2. Then what you're going to do is you are going to draw a sample cascade. Now the first cascade I want you to draw, I want you to trace my little squiggle that I've got here on page M3, just so you get the idea of how to draw it. So you're just going to take and you're going to trace over my squiggle like this, and then see if you can't join the lines properly like this. The last one will be straight up and down, and you'll have a cascade that looks like that. That's your traced one. And then I want you to draw your own squiggle where you'll go like this, draw a squiggle, and then there's your little V on top, and then come back in and connect the little loops, just like that, and that will be your own squiggle. So you'll have one cascade that you've traced and one cascade that you have done freehand. When you put it all together, it's going to look like this. And here's your method 1 and method 2 ruffle. Here's your trace cascade. Here's your own cascade. And then on that same page, you can I want you to put a ruffle on a flat and a cascade on a flat. It can be any garment. It can be a top, it can be a bottom, it can be a skirt, it can be pants, it can be a dress. I just want to see where you're able to put a cascade and a ruffle on 2 different garments. So if we look at our grading sheet, which is right here, you'll see that you've got a method 1 ruffle and a method 2 ruffle and a ruffle on a flat. Then in the cascade, we've got your trace squiggle cascade, where you've traced my cascade, your own squiggle cascade, and a cascade on a flat. Then I want you to draw 2 illustrations. One illustration that has a ruffle and one illustration that has a cascade. Now remember, illustrations have to have the croquis underneath. So you'll draw something similar to this. And here's this little dress. You can see it's got the croquis underneath. I've got a ruffle, double ruffle, on the bottom of this skirt, little ruffle on the little flutter sleeve here, and then this croquis has utilized a cascade, and the cascade is being used at the neckline. So that'll be the last part of your grading sheet for total points of 60 points. I also would like for you to include your inspiration pictures so that I can see what it is you were trying to draw, and I can tell if you've been drawing it correctly. So have a fun time drawing them. They're very satisfying to draw. They're a little tedious. They take you a little while, but they look really, really great when they're completely finished. So have fun drawing.